Rail engineers say Prasa needs to ditch old infrastructure like copper if it wants to curb theft and vandalism. The troubled rail agency has suffered rampant vandalism in recent years, losing millions of rand. eNCA's Barry Bateman spoke to some experts on the latest locomotive technology that could be an option for the agency and joins us now for that conversation from our Pretoria studios. So what is the sense we are getting then, Barry, in terms of how we stop people from stealing these overhead cables?
Yeah, good afternoon to us. Well, I think we could ask the question is, why are people stealing the cables? Well, it's for their value. It gets stolen, the copper cables, and they get sold to scrap dealers for money. Now, if you look at one of the ways that the rails are mostly, or, one of the most important ways that the rail infrastructure is being attacked, it has to do with the overhead cables. Now, these have to be copper cables because it is a high conducting material. It gets the power from the overhead cables down to the train so that it can push or pull a cargo or people. Now, you want to ask the question, well, what can you do to make that less lucrative? And it appears that there is a way, and this needs to be implemented, we understand, across the network so as to make it less enticing to want to steal it. Now, I spoke to rail engineer Linus Kunene, and he explained this particular rather simple technology.
So you've got your copper conduct wire, it's got a brass inset, a little bit of brass inset in it. So outside it looks like copper. A thief will see copper, they will cut the copper to steal it, but when they'll take it to the scrap dealer, and when the scrap dealer try to band that copper together with all the other copper in the furnace or whatever where they melt it, it will splatter, causing bubbles, and hence by destroying everything that was in the pot. And if so, when you steal that copper conduct wire with brass inset, for the scrap dealers, it becomes less of value. Instead, it becomes actually a high risk for them because then it's messing up their operations altogether. And most of them already knows this, and I mean that's why if they recognize that that copper conduct wire that was stolen has got that brass inset, they turn those people away.
So interesting insights there then into the workings of the value chain and why people steal these copper cables, Barry. How else would Prasa be able to crack down on this theft?
Well, Tulas, you think like you've got an alarm on your car at your home or something to indicate, to tell you, hey, somebody is trying to steal or break into my property. Well, there are systems like this that can be used on the rail network. And little devices, sensors that can be installed over certain intervals on the overhead lines. And the way Kunene was explaining it to me, you've got your line that is on a straight line. When you cut it, the lines fall to the ground. You would have a bend or a kink in there. Well, you've got sensors that would be along the line. They've got geolocators and all sorts of interesting technology, that the moment that break occurs, the exact location of where the line has been cut can be sent via a message system, wireless messaging system to the SAPS or to the security services, who will be able to respond quickly to the exact location. Now, this is the helpful part here, is that you're able to catch the people in the act. So not only are you preventing it, but you're taking away and you're addressing the syndicates that are attacking this technology, or the infrastructure rather. The other way is looking at and removing copper entirely from the system. And here you would look at the signaling system. At the moment, it requires connectivity through copper wires and so on. There is a push to go towards fiber, using fiber technology like we have at our homes as well for our internet. There's no value in stealing that. There's also the look at moving digital and to wireless technologies in some instances where it is applicable. Of course, this is a very important part of the rail network to us, because it's got to do with the safety of the network. So paramount that that gets protected as well. But those are just some of the solutions that the engineers are saying that Prasa should consider. Don't just replace it with what we've got, but let's look ahead so we can mitigate against it, but advance the network.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, Barry, that the contradiction between what happens when there's overhead cable theft with the Gautrain versus what happens when overhead cables at Prasa and those trains are concerned. There seems to be more willingness to find, the political will is there to find a solution and to curb the theft of overhead cables, well, at least at least to me it seems, in as far as the Gautrain is concerned. I mean, those cables get stolen, but not to the point of crippling the network such that the Gautrain doesn't run for long periods of time. We certainly haven't heard of a situation where the Gautrain is running on diesel locomotives, right?
Well, I think you've got two different agencies that are dealing with the networks, and some of these newer technologies that I've just spoken about are in fact installed on the Gautrain network. The Prasa is still lagging in relation to the Metro Rail and so on. So I think it has to do with the advancement of the network and the materials. For example, the overhead cables that have got those brass inserts, they actually are being used on the Gautrain network. So where you see network interruptions there, it's not necessarily the overhead cables, but other copper-related cables which have been damaged, which interrupts the infrastructure and the service.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Barry. But I suppose the point I'm making is the political will to say if the Gautrain can have these systems that protect its network, the people at the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa really need to get their act together and see what they can do to counter this scourge. Barry Bateman, live for us from Pretoria, watching that story for us.